Coming up on Added Time.
We knew that Ange was going to be sacked.
Maybe come back to Australia for a little bit. Do some media. Come on and do something for us.
This is not a great sign that no one out from the club has come out and squashed it.
Fantastic. But it was always fraught with risk.
It's because it's so rare. Is because it's so stupid.
No, I think
I haven't finished yet. Right?
Okay.
So yeah,
Manchester United. Look at this. So, who fell out of their chair on Sunday morning when the news came through about Ange?
Well, I was still awake. I stayed up to watch the game.
Couldn't sleep?
Well, no, I watched the game and I was just watching some of the post-match and I was texting a couple of people and then I saw he's been sacked and I'm like, oh, God. So, stayed up a little longer after that, to be honest.
But are you suggesting anyone was surprised? No one was surprised, given what had been occurring. You almost half expected it.
Especially 3-0, because the game, like almost all of Forest's games while he was there, shouldn't have ended that way. They should have scored at least one, maybe two, before Chelsea scored any.
They actually did well. They did actually very well.
Yeah, but what does that matter?
Well, yeah, particularly against Chelsea. And the idea, the absurdity of it, which we're going to dig into, but let's start from that point. The absurdity that a Forest coach should get sacked by losing against Chelsea, where I don't think they've won at home against them since 1997, that kind of tells you a lot about the situation.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Like whenever you're defining should we keep the manager or not based on one game, particularly a hard game, is in and of itself insanity.
Exactly.
But I don't think it was defined by that one game. We'll get into it right now.
Leading.
Yeah, of course it was. There was those 5 games in between his opening game against Arsenal, which anyone in the world would struggle against Arsenal. We saw them beat Real Madrid last year at home in the Champions League. And away to Newcastle, as I keep telling you, you win away to Newcastle, generally it means that you can win a title. It was those 5 games in between which really completely started the unravelling of something that we all said at the beginning was going to be highly predictable. 8th manager in 8 years for Evangelos Marinakis at Nottingham Forest. Olympiakos, 15 years as an owner, 16 permanent managers. So.
You intimated last week, Foz, that you had considerable worry because of the, they sprinkled out Sean Dyche's name and it looks like he's got the job as we sit here right now. They sprinkled his name out there. We had information that actually came from internal forces within the club to test the waters with the fans. And you made the point that this is not a great sign that no one out from the club has come out and squashed it.
Yeah, that's right. That was the moment for the owner to come out and say, and in fact in previous weeks before. So the reason he knew that it was all going very badly was because he had multiple opportunities to come out. Everyone was under pressure. Fans are not happy. We've spoken about why, a lot of the fans, but actually why the situation was quite difficult in that way, because of the way that Nuno had gone. And so it was in some ways not unique, but quite a rare situation which can turn toxic very quickly if the new manager comes in and actually doesn't get results. So therefore, over let's say the past 4 weeks at least, it was only 39 days we're talking about, but let's say, half of that last 3 weeks, Marinakis had an opportunity to just come out and say, well, listen, I get where you're going with this, we hear the fans and stuff, but actually this is the reason why we made the change, and we can see that the progress is happening, so look, everyone just calm down, this club's done great in the last few years, but we've got a plan now to get to the next. He never actually articulated as to why Ange was for him the right selection, and he just kind of left him to the wolves, basically. That's clearly the type of owner he is. He's been successful by doing that, as we've said a number of times. But this one is, I think, more insane than most, particularly the short length of time, because of the difference in the styles of the managers that he had. So in other words, if you're going to bring Ange Postecoglou in after Nuno, you can't, under really any circumstances, say that can end within 39 days. That's just lunacy.
Where does it leave his reputation in England, Boz? Ange Postecoglou I'm talking about.
In the main part, in a little bit of tatters, but it's not irretrievable. It obviously doesn't help, but this is why it's time for him, in my opinion, to take a sabbatical now. Just take a little bit of time off, maybe do some media, not in England. Just for a while, maybe come back to Australia for a little bit, do some media, come on and do something for us. Long term, I think he can return to the Premier League, but that won't be in the short term. To facilitate that return, in my opinion, he has to go somewhere else in Europe and to do very, very well, which I believe he's more than capable of doing. But the general consensus now, at the moment, it's not in a good place, which I can understand too. So we are biased. Ange is Australian, and we want him to do so well, not only for his sake, but for the future of Australian managers that happen to go over there.
Yep.
And it's all of us in a way. And this is where I think maybe if we've got time later, we should perhaps go into the DNA of some of the things that Ange would have picked up originally in his coaching career here, that's carried on over, which hasn't done him any favours. I don't know if we've got time. But like I said, some of the stats don't lie. In Spurs and Nottingham Forest in the last 17 Premier League games, 1 win.
Yeah.
31 losses out the last 51 games.
Anyone does that, they're in trouble.
In a lot of trouble. We talked about Marinakis. We know what type of manager that he is. In a way, I feel sorry for Ange, because I think if anyone was in that situation where a billionaire is chasing you and he starts to throw figures at you and you keep saying no, and he starts to throw figures at you, you keep saying no, all of a sudden, from basically knowing what you know in terms of the team, the way it's structured, which he would have done, because they would have done research on that team. They would have known it from, from a Spurs point of view. He would have taken a keen eye. But when somebody starts throwing perhaps maybe double, treble, maybe even quadruple what you are earning, which is always a consideration, all of a sudden, from some of the opinions you may have had of the players beforehand, all of a sudden you start, you might be turning around at the beginning saying, well, Adam Peacock, I don't really fancy him. Somebody offers you 4 times the amount of money, you might turn around and go, all right, Adam's all right. I reckon I can get something out of him. Yeah. But a few big lessons to come out of this, which we'll go into a little bit, that for me, from my perspective, if I had the privilege, if you like, to be able to speak to Ange, that I would suggest to him that maybe going in the future, wherever it be, Europe or wherever it may be, that I would suggest to him that would help him.
Yeah. We all know him. We all know Ange, and we all know how confident he is, how attached he is to his own belief, and it's well-founded belief that what he can do with a football team in terms of passing on that instruction, the pattern of play and all of that. And he felt, first week he said, I know, I don't have, this is not a project, I don't have long. I know exactly what I've got to do in these first 2 training sessions before the Batiste came, for instance. But, Vinny, was he always on a hiding to nothing? I saw you wrote on the weekend along the lines of, was this actually the right place to go? Does he look back and think, maybe I shouldn't have?
I could see why he took the job. I think anyone could. A good club, well-capitalised club, in Europe, historic club with a reputation. We know Ange likes to take on renovation jobs, so to speak. So the idea of taking on Brian Clough's club into Europe for the first time in 30 years, wow, fantastic. But it was always fraught with risk for the reasons that we've spoken about. And he's really unlucky in a way, because I don't know how much more he actually could have done on the field. Things were trending in the right direction. I saw something, I think it was Sky Sports, Martin O'Neill in the last 24 hours going through all the numbers. You can talk about the results, but there are a lot of statistics and numbers which actually show that this team was trending in the right way. And what I thought would happen was that because it was Marinakis who appointed him and clearly had some level of admiration for what he'd done in the past and the Greek connection, obviously you would have thought he looked a little bit deeper than surface level and thought, that's my guy. So we're going to bring him in and back him in. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And so many other things went against him, like the matches themselves. I don't know how many of the... OK, Ange has definitely got a set-piece problem he needs to address for sure in future, but like the ones they've conceded and the goals they didn't score, they're down to individual actions on players, lack of urgency, confidence in the moment.
Well, you look at Igor Jesus on the weekend, he hits the crossbar and the post that way. Like, that's really hard to do.
And things like that, they drop, and goals like the ones they conceded, they don't get conceded when you're a team that's in a better place. You've got a higher level of confidence. And that was down before Ange even got in there. He got in there and couldn't lift it up. Too many things went against him. The fans, the mood was against him from the start and got darker and darker. So it was a big risk taking it, and Ange is a big risk taker, but it didn't work out.
Yeah, for me, Foz, like it is spiralling football. We've always known it. It was ruthless in the 80s, in the 90s. But look at Serie A managerial turnover.
Different countries handle it differently.
But like, I think now with the multi-club idea that's come in and projects, and like Marinakis is part of a multi-club operation, that people are picking up clubs all around Europe, dotted around Europe, including England, and going in and thinking, I need to make a change, I've got to appease the fans, I've got to do this. They're wary of us because we're not locals, we're not, here for the good of the town, to embrace everyone. They'll say all the right things marketing-wise. Just where football is going with all of this. And Ange is a bit of an example, 39 days. That's what he's going to be tagged with until he gets his next job and has his next success. But where football is going with the idea that it has to happen like that?
Well, I don't know if it is, because at the same time, it's the right question. It's a very good question, and there are many clubs doing that. I'd have to see like the facts as to whether it's actually escalating. I mean, the fact that this is a record in the Premier League is for good reason. It's because it's so rare, is because it's so stupid, actually, right? So, you know, it doesn't happen often that any manager at this level will only get this amount of time, irrespective, because it just doesn't make any sense around the appointment itself. However, I'm thinking about Bournemouth, Brighton, you know, and those types of clubs who are now taking a very different approach. And see, what used to happen was, and there was very little data in the game, right? And if you're not using it today, I think you're just going to be falling behind. So what used to happen is owners' level of understanding was very ordinary, and sometimes you had football directors, sometimes not too many in the UK. Those kind of football directors was something that was across the continent. And then what would happen is they'd decide that a coach should be able to succeed, or they'd had some success elsewhere, and if that didn't work out, they weren't really sure why. It was just all about results. It was entirely about results. Whereas today, it actually doesn't have to be. And so you're seeing, I think, some new types of clubs come through. Unfortunately, many of them are funded, like Girona, for example, or you know, through these multi-club ownership models, which I don't like. So what does it mean for players and managers? I think it's starting to become a different world. And in respect of the time given to people, it should be positive. And that's why, you know, I agree with what Vince was saying before. Is what I've been saying the last few days is we knew that Ange was going to be sacked because that was the environment of the club and what this owner had clearly decided. He didn't come out and say anything. However, a tremendous amount of the work of that team was excellent. And he had changed that team already quite dramatically. In fact, extremely dramatically. I saw this morning that in those 5 games, they were number 1, I think, at forward passes, and they were like number 3rd at forward passes into the opposition box. So, like, anyone who's at all interested in trying to analyse the situation rather than just responding on only pure emotion, which the owner has done, is saying it's going in the right direction. And however, these are the defensive problems. So the question I would have been asking is, do we have, you know, to Ange, do you have adequate defensive balance? Because all of this attacking stuff is really trending really great. But in what way can you make sure that you're going to keep the back door closed as well? Because, you know, the 1 in 17. I think that's the question. But actually, you were employed to do a certain thing and you're doing it. It's just we need reassurances about where this is. Because don't forget, he only 2 months out from a transfer window, and then you get a couple of guys on loan from Tottenham who had also already been playing this way, or you get in 3 players, and all of a sudden it's also a very different group. Yeah. So that's why I say, you know, this really made no sense. That's why I support what is more of a data-driven approach to football, so that we can have evidence-based situations where we can actually discuss them. And that's the same in youth development and all of those aspects. I think, particularly here in Australia, we need to understand what people are actually doing, not what people just think they're doing, or what your eyes tell you. Because as an analyst, I can tell you it's very often the opposite.
Still to come on Added Time.
He's broken a number of barriers, and that's important. And I would like him to see go and coach in some of the other continental leagues as well.
Conference
Fantastic.
League, Europa League, Champions League.
If, for example, he goes to Dortmund, and we'll get on to Juventus in a second, and they don't qualify for the Champions League, see you later.
Manchester United. Ooh, look at this. Boz, you mentioned before about things that Ange might like to consider for his future, about how his teams play, for instance. What are those?
Well, Vince put an article a couple of days ago saying it was a mistake to go there, but it wasn't the only one that was made. A few little mistakes which pile on. First and foremost, after that first game against Arsenal, when he turned around and basically said in the post-match press conference that it won't take 2 months, it won't take two weeks, it'll be done straight away.
He responded to the question of when are we going to start seeing the change in your style?
Yeah, well,
not when are you going to start winning every game.
No,
and I think
I haven't finished yet, right?
Oh, okay.
So when he turns around and says that, as a player, it's a bit of a repudiation of what's been going on the last year and a half, because he's basically saying, I looked at it for one game, and it's going out the window. So that's one. Second thing, and this is something that's off the pitch, the press conferences that he doesn't do him any favours. They need to be polished up completely, because you've got to take into consideration that there are going to be people that don't like you, no matter what you do. There are going to be people on the other side that like you no matter what you do. But the ones that are in between, who are just reporting what they're seeing in the facts, that can be slanted either way, depending on how you are. Now, okay, the press conference on Friday, the 5-minute monologue, okay? If I was a Forest fan, I'd be saying, like, what about us?
Yeah.
You're here right now, like, and I can understand as well from Ange's perspective a little bit. So he probably, and we've seen it before with Mourinho, with the, remember the respect thing at Manchester United when feel as though he wasn't being given the same amount of respect. But at that time, in that situation, my take was, like I said, if I was a Forest fan, I'd be thinking to myself, what about us? What about now?
Yeah.
And the other thing I would say as well, when you are on a streak which you haven't won for quite some time, it's not ideally the right time. And I straight away thought if he loses tomorrow, he's gone. Yeah. And another thing that I would think going forward, remember, he's not very experienced at this level. It's only just over 2 seasons, okay? And this is no disrespect to the backroom staff, because I believe Emile Jednek and Montgomery, 2 people who know their football very, very well. But when you're inexperienced at a certain, whatever it is, whether it be for, an analyst, whether it be a journalist, whether it be whatever, I think the ideal thing, if you can, and it's affordable, is to employ somebody with, or not only employ them, get close to somebody like Arsene Wenger with great seniority, great experience of the particular profession that you're in, and that you can bounce things off. Because people might say behind closed doors, oh yeah, they might say, we tried to tell him, but he wouldn't, which is understandable too, because we know Ange has got a little bit of that in him. But I just think at that time, wouldn't it have been wonderful if he had the ability to call Arsene Wenger, to call Alex Ferguson, to call somebody just to say, can I bounce a few things off you? Those are the 3 main things that I've seen going forward, which I think need rectify, especially the press conferences, because it did come to the point where the chip on the shoulder is understandable because of where he's come from, but it got to the point where it started to become all about him rather than the place that he's at.
Yeah.
That 5-minute monologue, I agreed with every single word that he said. I thought he was absolutely bang on, but the wrong time to do it, the day before a game that could decide your tenure. That's the sort of thing he needed to get off his chest, I think, between jobs after Spurs. Put out your defence for why you thought it was a bad decision to get sacked. Do that before you take on another job. That way, when you come to the next job, you don't have to say these things. You can actually focus more on what is in front of you. And I know he said that because his record and who he was being criticised. And what he was trying to say was, okay, things are going bad now by result, but my history says, and if you look at this alternate viewpoint of my Spurs journey, that says that I will get there. And look, I think connected to that is just that he gets a rough run for these reasons, because nobody over there cares about his record and his accomplishments, whereas for us, from this perspective, that's exactly why we believe in him, is because we've seen him do it. They don't care to consider that because it's at a level they deem not worthy. Fair enough, I understand how it works, but that sort of explains to me a little bit why there's such this big dichotomy in views about Ange. It's between people who put value in his achievements and believe that that will lead to greater achievements, and then people who see him having won easy things in easy leagues, and you're being found out now because you're here.
Yeah, I mean, there was an article in the Times on the weekend where the writer spoke of the Europa League triumph and basically said, well, any Tottenham manager who's ever been at Tottenham would have won that. They basically said it was like I described it in an article I wrote yesterday for Wild World of Sports as they basically view the Europa League like a used hubcap.
Yeah,
like that's the
such
version
a crap too, because like I remember, we all lived through it. Week to week, I remember people saying, well, you got Eintracht Frankfurt next. You know how hard it is to go there and win?
Away.
Oh, Bodo Glimt, away, it's cold, artificial pitch. I don't think it's... So they were favourites on paper, but through the process, no one was saying, you're going to win this. And then he wins it, and then they're like, oh, but you should have won it.
Everyone could have won it.
Vinny, from a journalist perspective, you know a lot about presentation and so forth. What about from the press conference point of view? Do you think it does need polishing up?
Look, in relation to what I said before about...
Not the specific incident on Friday. I'm talking about in general.
In general, look, I like the way he goes about it, generally speaking. I do think, though, more for just perception's sake and the way people talk about him, he needs to be mindful of the looking at the floor in post-match press conferences, just because it gives people ammunition to whack him with. I personally don't have a big problem with it, but if enough fans and people do, maybe it's something you should address.
Every journalist inside that room when he's doing a press conference absolutely love the fact that they're talking to someone like him, because they know they're going to walk out of there with something that is going to be of interest to a lot of people, because he is like that. But you're right, like he kind of has the...
I'm not sure about that.
Essentially he's making himself a target a lot of the time, and that's what you're getting at. Is that
I just don't think you don't need to be like... Timing's a good question.
Yeah.
But again, coming back to what I said about having to bounce off somebody, having an advisor there who's experienced in the ways, especially different countries, different cultures, and especially when you're in England and all that.
Like a Mourinho type person who's been there.
Anyone who's had that experience, who knows, who's sort of lived that life, to know it's not a problem whatsoever just to ring up. And a lot of them, I think, would be really like honoured if they, even though they're like legends themselves, but I think they love that. Even if the phone said, listen, it's Ange Postecoglou here. I'm sorry to bother you. Do you mind if I just ask your advice on something? And the overwhelming majority would keep it quiet as well.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, I was just going to say, so, there's a lot of different styles in press conferences, and I like that the personalities come out of all of the different managers. I think it's important. I think you should be who you are.
Yeah.
But the questions that Bozza and you've raised is a good one. I think it's a broader question, though, perhaps not just his own style, but what is the impact on the club and on the team and on his... prospects of keeping these jobs, for example. So then you talk about the media narrative, and so that would be the question I'd ask, is say, OK, you can do what you want, anyone can do what they want, but is it conducive to you being able to get more time in these roles in order to then do your work? Because it's clear, he's made clear that it's second season winning things, which is when he's won things. And that's why this job was different, because when he said this is not a project, in another breath he's also saying, well, actually, I'm more or less a project coach. And so this job was unique to him because it was the one time when he wasn't going to have time. It was clear that even at Marinos they gave him time. There was a certain amount of time, I think, at Celtic and blah, blah, blah. So, it was a kind of mismatch between what he needed to be able to change it, and yet he was on the cusp of getting the results that he needed. To do so. And that's why I believe, even if Marinakis was saying, you need to win in the first, obviously he told him that, you need to win and change the team, which is the most difficult thing to do. Marinakis should have stepped in at that point and said, well, I know that I said you had to win games in the first months and keep us in the top 10, but actually we're going to give you more time now because I can see what's going on. But ultimately, I just think the broader question is, how do you make sure that you control, or can you control the external environment perhaps better in a way to not be under these, catastrophic levels of pressure, if you like?
Yeah, not easy.
And I don't have the answer to that. I'm just raising the question.
Well, you look at Arne Slot.
Because all coaches are thinking that way. And by the way, finally, all of our young coaches are watching this. And so on the pro licence, one of the issues that the coaches talk about and try to educate each other on is selecting the chair, selecting the right environment and club to go into. It's a part of their education. Obviously, it's fundamental to being professional and staying in a job, right? So this is going to be a huge test case now, what Ange did here. He'll go and talk to them at some point, and so they'll be able to now calibrate, OK, that's why he did it. He took a calculated risk to do that. But the off-field and external environment is something they'll be talking about as to what you say is going to impact that.
You look at Arne Slot at Liverpool, for instance. He's going through something that you're pointing out, is that all of a sudden you're in this... We don't know how he's going to react because, on face value, at Liverpool, it's been a dream run. And fair enough too, because he's done so well. Won what he did last season. But all of a sudden now we see how a manager deals with it. Ruben Amorim, you've got to admire him a little bit because he feels like he's come through it.
And you've got to admire Sir Jim for giving him the backing to say you're going to be here for a while.
Well, there's two sides to that coin, right? It's the infamous boardroom backing.
It's funny with Slot, and this goes back to the environment of coaching in general that we were talking about earlier. And I know social media is whatever you probably shouldn't read it or put too much credence in it. But I've seen Liverpool fans in the last little bit start to call Arne Slot a fraud. And it's like, is it possible that there's somewhere between genius and fraud in football management anymore? Is there a middle ground which says actually they're a good coach and the team's going through a rough period? Or do we now just live in a world where all managers must win all the time, and if you don't, you're an idiot and you're out?
Big clubs, I do think that window or the distance between those two has definitely shortened.
Who wrote that?
Oh, I can't remember. Some Liverpool fan.
Well, that makes sense.
How many numbers after their name?
Correct. But it's a view shared with some people. And even for one person to think that, for a guy who's clearly an extremely competent coach, just won the Premier League, won a title in the Netherlands as well, if I'm not mistaken, with Feyenoord. It's like, well, he's clearly not an idiot.
No, of course not.
Let's just finish.
But
so
that's
on that,
the
it's important.
That's the extremists. You get them everywhere.
Yeah.
It's important what you're saying, because the thing is, because, again, go back to Ange, I think it was last year when he actually had a press conference when he was talking about this, and what he was saying was, listen, I get that you guys, my past record probably doesn't mean anything to you, but I've been coaching for 30 years, and so therefore you can't just say that I'm a complete idiot. And that's the phenomenon that you're talking about. And this is why I always liked, and if you like, respected the Italian football culture, for example, and why I'm so pleased that our coaches are highly educated here now, and because we tried to turn the discussion here today to, it doesn't matter if you don't like their style or you don't like them or they're unsuccessful, they know what they're doing. So, in other words, once they're highly educated and have some experience, at least you know they're making highly educated decisions. And then sometimes the club environment is not right. Sometimes they can't manage a particular group of players. And the Italians have known this for a long time. That's why you see coaches often go back to the same club 3 times. Because what they say is, listen, you're a great coach, but you just, at this point in time, it's not in this environment. And you went over there and did well again. And we think this group is going to respond better to you than what the last one did, whatever. But ultimately, the competence is there. And what you see on social media is basically just a kind of rejection of that, which is stupid.
Give us a location, can be a nation, can be in a World Cup year, can be a league, can be drill it down to a club. Well, that possibly it could be in Ange's future, realistically.
Well, I definitely think a move to Europe would be the best for him, club football-wise. But I wouldn't rule out an international team and possibly Greece. They're out of the World Cup qualification. They will be starting in less than 12 months the road to qualification for Euro 28.
Which is in England.
Well, exactly.
City
I
ground,
think
one of the venues.
that's something that he will consider. So there are a lot of good Greek footballers right at this moment in time in terms of looking at the team. They underperformed in their World Cup qualifying group, massively so. So that's another good point because this time, like you made the point at the start, Vince, he went into a situation where the previous guy was not only popular, evidently with the players as well, but especially with the fans, and they had the most successful season in 30 years.
Does Marinakis fund that team?
I don't know.
That club?
But remember with Marinakis as well, as much as everybody's a little bit off him at the moment because of what's going on with Ange, he has dragged that club, Nottingham Forest, up from near relegation, put his own money into it. He who pays the piper calls the tune. That's how it is in football, okay? The club side, I hope that he stays in Europe and maybe goes to Spain, maybe goes to Italy, Germany, possibly even France, rebuilds, has some success, and then look to come back. I don't think a Premier League club at this moment in time, nor a Championship club, would be a good idea for him. Have a bit of a break, have a sabbatical, do some TV work, maybe come back here to Australia to do some TV work first. Just wait a little bit for in England, because right now, if he went and done some TV work in England, inevitably when you're commenting on the game, you have to offer some type of constructive criticism. At this moment in time, for him to say something, you're going to get. You're talking about narrative. You're going to get people saying, "What?" After you've just had 8 games and haven't won one. So just wait a little bit. That's all, and then go. But we don't know him. He may be thinking to himself, "Enough's enough now." We don't know. We don't know that.
I agree with pretty much everything you've said, Boz. 2 things. One, the punditry thing I think is really worth considering for him anywhere in the world, just to go back to the thought of, remember when he went on Fox Sports after the Young Socceroos job? Yeah. That was a really critical period in his comeback as a coach, because it reminded the country something that we'd all forgotten, which was actually you're smart and you know what you're talking about. And then after that, after a period of 6, 12 months or whatever it was being on Fox Sports, and speaking a lot of sense, in club owners' minds, it was then, well, you're the first person we should appoint if we have an opening. So he should do something like that in Europe just to remind people and to detach himself from this narrative that he almost got Spurs relegated, which I get frustrated hearing that because he didn't even come close to them being relegated. They finished 13 points above the drop zone.
And he ran dead for the last 4 months.
And in fact, that gap between the relegation spots and Spurs was the precise reason why he was able to win the Europa League, which meant he could put his best players in those games and not the league. But my answer in terms of where he should go, anywhere but England for the external factors. The one I'd love to see that I think is unlikely. I see that apparently Igor Tudor has only 2 games or 1 or 2 games left at Juventus to prove himself before they get the chop, or he gets the chop there. That is, I see, a club that has fallen from its former grace and should be looking for a coach like Ange to bring them back up, not only in terms of winning, but style as well.
Foz, as we live Ange's life for him, where's he going next?
Yeah, look, I don't know. I think the sad part was shortly, I mean, what happened, of course, is he replaced Nuno and Nuno went to West Ham, and I thought that would have actually been an ideal job for him. In fact, when...
Did you see West Ham this morning?
Yeah, I saw them.
Well,
maybe it was even more ideal. They're not going too well, but... I just think that would have been, really excellent because that is a club actually that understands good football and has a history and so on, a bit more like Spurs. But
I've got 2 for you.
Yeah.
Shoot them down from the sky.
Yeah.
I just had a look at teams where they've had either ructions, unsettlement in the last 12, 24 months, but of a stature where it'd be attractive for Ange, for his stature. Ajax, they're under a bit of pressure. In Netherlands, they're a famous club. They win things. They want to win things. And if they do not win things...
what he does, really.
Borussia Dortmund. Might be a little bit of a stretch. You guys know how big that club is, 80,000 every home ground game. Niko Kovac is doing an okay job since he came in. They're doing pretty well. They're near enough to the top. They pushed Bayern Munich all the way recently. But clubs of that stature, am I dreaming? Or...
Borussia Dortmund is I said, a little bit too far. Look, the big boys, your Juventus, your Dortmunds, he would have obviously got their attention with the start that he had to Spurs and the fact that he won the trophy. But because it was balanced out with the 17th position, they would have wanted to take another look at him. They have taken another look at him right now, so I'm sure they want to have one more look at him. You're talking about the top level clubs. Yeah. I'm thinking just a little bit below that. A team that's not got as much profile, as much expectation, that he can just settle down a little bit, just to rebuild. Rather than having that, because you're talking about Dortmund. I know, we talk about Bayern Munich dominating that league, and as they're doing this season as well. But Dortmund are the second biggest club in Germany, and there's a lot of expectations. If, for example, he goes to Dortmund, and we'll get on to Juventus in a second, and they don't qualify for the Champions League, see you later. Yeah. If he goes to Juventus and they don't qualify for the Champions League, pretty much see you later. So I think that those are 2 jobs that after just the one little step back from that, just like that sort of mid-range, do really well, then those are ideal clubs to come straight back to.
Real Sociedad?
No? Yeah. I don't like to say that because I've got that thing.
But look at Nuno as an example, right? Because he got sacked from Tottenham. Where did he go after that? Al Ittihad in Saudi Arabia, and I think won the title. I'm not saying I want Ange to go to Saudi Arabia, but what I'm saying is that was good enough for a coach like Nuno to then get another job in the Premier League with Forest. So it doesn't really matter so much where he goes as long as he's successful and enough time, I think, passes. I think he'll get another Premier League job one day, but he needs to do something else somewhere first.
Well, my answer would have been, I think he's broken a number of barriers, and that's important. And I would like him to go and coach in some of the other continental leagues as well, and be the first Australian to be there.
Flamengo in Brazil.
Yeah, and then because then, and then what happens? Not necessarily, because it's opening pathways, and so all of a sudden his work not only his work, but his work at Celtic has certainly contributed to Muskie being in the window for Rangers, although he's obviously won the treble with them and everything else. But it certainly doesn't hurt. And EPL is now open, Okay, I think we would have loved for him to be successful at Forest, and then it would have been a bit of the flavour of the day. But to go across to Spain, to Germany or elsewhere, even with a second-tier club in the top leagues, I think it would be fantastic for the future pathways of Australian coaches.
Yeah.
Still to come on Added Time.
Win one, get everyone's hopes up, lose one.
Wait while the Chinese season is still going.
It's in my interest to pack this away on the CV before I go.
Europa League, Champions League.
As far as I'm concerned, at the moment, he's the best striker in Europe.
Because a player of that stature, he knows how to get himself into form.
Onside, offside.
Okay.
Onside, yes. Offside, no.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Statements. I've got two. Vinny's got two to ask you two learned souls. Mark Bosnich, first up.
Yeah.
Manchester United. Ooh, look at this. Beat Liverpool on the weekend.
Superb win.
Onside, offside. Manchester United wins at home against Brighton to make it through on the trot.
Onside.
Yeah.
Excuse me. It's not going to be easy because Fabian Hertzler's men had that wonderful win on the weekend against...
Didn't see it. Sorry,
against,
boss.
yeah, I was going to say, what team? Against Newcastle. Danny Welbeck playing against his old club, scored 2 on the weekend. Yeah. Very, very organised. They're very, very close to the table as well. And it has been, unfortunately, with Manchester United for quite some time, you know, a case of win one, get everyone's hopes up, lose one. They've won 2 now on the trot. And I know things fell into the right place on the weekend. Got the early goal for Mbumo, which basically they had something to defend with. Liverpool were pretty much in control of the whole game, but there were some good signs that Lehmann's the new goalkeeper is outstanding. Ruben Amorim showed that he can adapt and did adapt and played in a different way that he normally plays. The players that came on showed the right passion, the right spirit. Throughout the team, there was a good feeling amongst all the players. And even after Liverpool came back into it and equalised, they still went ahead and got the winner. So let's just hope this is the start of something very, very special. But Brighton will not be easy because they're a very, very well-organised side and a very difficult team to play against.
Foz, Kevin Muscat, you mentioned him just there. It looks like the move, the possible move to Rangers has collapsed.
Yep.
It's
They've made a
because
signing, I think.
the Chinese season was still going. He wasn't going to hop out at Shanghai, where they're trying to win the title. It's close there. So the question is, onside, offside. Is Kevin Muscat right to say to Rangers, wait while the Chinese season is still going?
I would say halfway, but if I had to, I'd say probably onside. The reason also being is because it's important for him to have another title on his CV. I think over the medium term it makes a difference. And so therefore what he's doing is that 3 seasons in a row actually, which is also very rare. I think he went straight from the title in Yokohama, straight there, and then
I think there was a second place in Japan. So he won it, and then second place, and then won it last season in China.
Okay, got it. So, yeah, consecutive, and therefore I think he's smart enough to know that it's in my interest to pack this away on the CV before I go. And also, you don't know what's happening internally. I'm not sure whether Muskie actually turned down the situation.
We don't know
the
whole story.
Yeah.
On face value, it looks like he just said no because the timing was wrong. But who knows?
Yeah, I think the club's in a bit of turmoil. Not sure how much they're investing. I think Muskie's smart enough to look at all of the different components as to whether it's right for him rather than being desperate. He's made that clear. I think that's part of the growth of Australian coaches, which has been brilliant. No longer just desperate for any job in Europe. I mean, he's in Belgium. He knows what can happen. Popper went, I think, to Turkey.
And Greece,
they know what can happen, so they're much more careful now about building their career and making sure they make the right move. And for that reason, I think Muskie's smart enough to make that decision.
Yeah. Boz, Harry Kane obviously left Tottenham for Bayern Munich and he's absolutely killing it right now. Sneaky Ballon d'Or chance, I think, in future for him. He's now being linked with a move back to Spurs, onside, offside, returning to a club that you've previously been at.
Offside, I would say, because a lot's changed since he's left before, and I would... The way he's been going, so far as I'm concerned, at the moment, he's the best striker in Europe. And Bayern Munich, the only unbeaten side in the top 5 leagues in Europe, still... They're a really good chance to win the Champions League. If not this season, every year they are, but this season especially. I would not be entertaining the idea until I've actually tasted success in that Champions League with Bayern Munich. And when you're talking about coming back to, you're going to come from a team that's challenging for the title, challenging for Champions League, to a team that are challenging really and realistically either for a domestic trophy, one of the two if they're in it, the second or third tier European trophies. They're not title contenders yet, or a top 4 spot or top 5, whatever you want to call it. So it's really, really difficult when you are challenging for titles at the highest level, then to come back down when you're still playing very well. So offside.
Is it ever a good idea to go back?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, of course. And won 2 trophies. I went back to win trophies and did that, but that was a little bit different because I knew if I'd stayed at Aston Villa that I wouldn't have the opportunity to win the title within the next 5 or 6 years, and was proved correct. This way, I can tell you now, from now towards till Harry or Kane retires, Tottenham will still not be in the position to win the title, serious contenders.
Fair. Foz, Mo Salah has started every game of this Premier League season. He's only missed 5 minutes. And obviously Liverpool, as we discussed, looking a bit dodgy at the moment. Onside, offside, it's time for Slot to bench him.
Look forward to our comments from North Africa if this answer goes...
no, well, possibly, but I'd say offside. Only if he's tired, not if he's not performing well. Because a player of that stature, he knows how to get himself into form, and therefore benching him's not doing anything for him. Is it going to do something for the team? I'm not too sure. But the other reason why I say offside is because actually I think a lot of the problems they're having is him integrating with the new players. I don't know how he's going to integrate from the bench. So that just doesn't make sense to me from that perspective. I think he's got we've spoken about it before. And just the fact that he doesn't have as many goals as what I think he had 7 at this time already last year, that his output is not at the same level. You're looking at a guy who knows how to perform, week in, week out. 29 goals last year, top goal scorer. I mean, he won everything. So he doesn't just decline like that. The team is different, and that's affecting him. To me, it's more about Slot finding the answers for him on the field to operate within this new environment than it is about just taking out one of your best pieces.
Crystal balls, guys. It's European week on Stan Sport. A lot of great UEFA action with Conference League, Europa League, Champions League on this week. Guys, got to ask this one. I'm looking forward to seeing if Atletico Madrid can disrupt Arsenal at home. Hard thing to do. Not many teams can do it.
No.
Whatever league they play in.
That's true.
But Diego Simeone loves a disruption. He did it very, very well against Real Madrid recently.
He did.
Unbelievable.
What kind of plan, what kind of Diego Simeone team can we expect to try and do this at the Emirates this week, guys?
Well, he'll attempt to disrupt them like he did with Real Madrid. They had a poor start the season, but they're back up to 4th in the league. And we know his track record. And he'll be feeling good about himself after Roy Keane said that he thought that he would be the right guy for Manchester United eventually. And he'll be confident in terms of the fact that against Mikel Arteta, I'm quite certain he'll be thinking to himself, we know how Arsenal play, how they want to play, and what they do very well is disrupt that in whatever way that they possibly can. But he's coming up against, in my opinion, an Arsenal side who are growing in confidence and maturity week in, week out, and have got the best squad. I would actually go as far as to say probably the best squad in the whole of European football, and who are on a high. And like we said before, when we were talking about Forest going there, and they've had Real Madrid there before, they've beaten them. It's a very difficult place to go for any team in the world, and to go and beat them. That's why, last season with Paris's performance in both legs was such an outstanding feat.
Puts spring in Simeone's step, though, a challenge like this, doesn't it? And he already has a vast amount of spring in his step. It does. On the touchline. I can see a fantastic 90 minutes of football here in terms of energy, and it might not be amazing, overly pretty, but it'll be
Yeah, he does have an overabundance of spring. A
lot of pollen.
You know what? Amazing job, as Arteta's rightly said. Arteta has not been there as long. He's been there, I think, it's 14 seasons now, might be.
Yeah, sure.
And what he's done to that club is just simply astounding. And they are now in the gear. They scored 10 goals, in the Champions against, was it Eintracht Frankfurt? And also, 5 against Real Madrid. It's just unbelievable. So they're a real danger now, which Arteta knows. The thing is, Arteta's in a great position because their defence is so strong. Conceded, just 3 in EPL? None so far in the first 2 games. They are defensively the best team in Europe. And when you consider Zubimendi, Gyökeres, and Eze and what they can do already in attack, geez, I mean, they're obviously firming, they were, but as one of the favourites for this actual title, And the beauty, of course, of this game is tomorrow morning, right, where neither of them have won this competition. So, I think of the two, it's Arsenal who are in the better position to do so.
Gents, enjoy football.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Great.
This has been another Stan Sport production.